Welcome to the NC Spin After Spin. Additional comments from our panelists just available on our website. I want to ask each of you, what do you wish you had said on last week's show, but you didn't? John Hood, start with you.
Well, I made a brief reference to a Carolina demography study looking at North Carolina's growth rates over last year and since 2010, and looking at the different patterns. A lot of things are familiar. Wake and Mecklenburg County are growing rapidly, as we know. The Charlotte area and the Triangle area are among our fastest growing populations, though we also have a lot of population growth along the coast and in some pockets of the mountains where we're having a lot of people moving in for retirement purposes and recreation. But the main point that you could see in these data in the last year is that during the Great Recession and right after, there was a lot of home buying in Charlotte, in Raleigh, partly because the prices had come down. People wanted to live close in if they could, so they bought in something. But because more people have done that, they've knocked the prices so far up, people are now going back to thinking, well, you know, if I live 20 miles away, I can work in Charlotte, but I can live in a community where I can buy a larger house, and maybe it's in a county, has better schools. So that older pattern that we're used to of rapid growth in the suburbs and the exurbs appears to be trending back up.
Now, these people that are moving in and the growth that is taking place, are they coming from outside the state, or are they fleeing rural area?
A lot of it appears to be people moving within North Carolina from rural areas to either directly in Charlotte and Raleigh, which are certainly still growing rapidly, but also in some of the surrounding areas, particularly Triangle and Charlotte. We, of course, do also import from other states.
Rebecca Tippett and that crowd over there, they do some good work.
They do.
There's no question. Phil Kirk, what do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
I've often wondered if anybody's ever responded to nothing. I said everything I wanted to. I don't want to be the first one to do that. So
not on this panel, they haven't.
I'm not going to be the first. When we're talking about racial balance and charters reflecting the balance of racial balance in the community, I'd also say that many traditional schools don't reflect that anymore, because school boards are if not all, elected, and they're afraid to redistrict. They're afraid to politically to make sure that each school reflects the balance. We've moved away from that, so I'm not sure that's good or bad, but we don't need to criticize. We don't need to criticize charters for doing the same thing that the publics have.
How much of this is because of the fact that the parents get tired of their children being moved from school to school?
In my opinion, that's why Wake County, another fast-growing county, parents have moved their children out of schools, public schools, because they don't like the instability. Now, the Wake County School Board several years ago made it a part of their policy that they would grandfather in students and not do much moving, but I read recently where they might have to move away from that again.
Because that does lead to the instability.
But that's why people leave, in my opinion, why people leave the traditional public schools. They don't like that.
Rufus Edmiston, what do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
I wish I'd said that I am very proud of my degree from the University of North Carolina. It gave me a chance to do some mighty wonderful things. And I think that the chancellor has done a good job of over 100 what I call barriers to this kind of tomfoolery is going on. I have great hope and great faith in Carolina. And before we lose sight of the fact that it's one of the greatest universities in America, we should give them a chance now give a cooling off period. Everybody, all you NC State and Wake Forest and the Duke people, let's all don't be gloating, because you might find yourself there before you know it.
I just have to tell you, one of our researchers called the UNC Alumni Association. They said, Rufus who? Chris Fitzsimon, what do you wish you'd have said on
that? I don't believe.
What do you wish you'd have said on last week's show?
Well, we talked about the redistricting cases before the courts, and we talked about the fact that the U.S. Supreme Court is hearing a case from Wisconsin about extreme partisan gerrymandering. We just had arguments this past week in a case in North Carolina before federal judges in Greensboro, and I've said this on the show before. One of the most interesting things, I think the General Assembly leadership is worried about these cases because when they first redrew the congressional districts, Representative David Lewis said, we drew 10 Republican congressional districts because we couldn't draw 11.
Yeah.
And that was his public comment. Now, their comments are much less about partisan redistricting and talking about fairness and all these things. And I do think, I'd be surprised if we don't have, and it's not going to be great, if the Supreme Court doesn't in some way try to curtail partisan redistricting. The problem is they're not going to do it in a definitive way, but I do think the momentum in the country on the court, I really feel like something's actually going to change.
Yeah, but what won't change is we'll keep continually
Well, that's
having
right.
these lawsuits every time we go through redistricting. Well, thanks for watching the After Spin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.